Hello, everyone. How are you? I'm Michael Gibson. I am the creator of Norm Therapy and also the CEO of Norm Therapy Incorporated. I'm also the CEO and chairman of a nonprofit, Abuse Refuge Org, affectionately known as ARO, ARO, Abuse Refuge Org. It's a 501c3, and it's a registered public charity with the IRS in the United States. We serve people around the world. We train people around the world to become norm therapists. But it's not just me. A lot of people like to try to give me a lot of credit, and maybe for the concept and the initial structures and basically the idea. But it takes a whole lot of moving parts and some pretty excellent people behind the scenes to work with us every single day. We work as a team. Some of the people say it's one of the best work environments they've ever been involved anywhere in the world. We kind of like that. We kind of, toot our own horn with that one. But we look at opportunities to just get better every day at what we do, because the business we're in is caring for people and helping them out of those, what we call doldrums of hell that they find themselves, especially as it relates to their abuses. Some of the abuses are acute, some of them are chronic, but they're all relatable to one thing, and that's fear. Every single abuse on the planet has an element of fear associated with it. And we aim simply, always, I do a little Spanish in there, siempre, forgive me. We always aim to target that particular abuse with techniques and strategies that I've developed over the past 2 decades. And they seem to work very well in our accolades and honorable mentions, as well as testimonies, are in the thousands, literally. So thank you for joining us today. Today, our very special guest is the head of hiring and human resources for all of ARO, Abuse Refuge Org, as well as Norm Therapy Inc. And so we say legal, we actually require our employees, who are also volunteers, to extend their expertise for 10% of their time over into the nonprofit. That way we can keep that arm's length transaction. We try to do everything by the book and HIPAA regulated as well. So without any further ado, I want to bring in our hiring manager, Nicole Leonard. She's an amazing human being, and you're going to enjoy this session. Please come in, Nicole. Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm hoping that I have everything on mute here. I do. Okay, good. I had an echo going on. Sorry. First things first, the most important thing today is your birthday. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nicole. Happy birthday to you. Yay.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. So, what are you doing for your birthday? Please tell us. You don't have to give all the specific names. I don't want anybody stalking on you, but what are you guys going to do today?
Yeah, we're just gonna go out to dinner at one of my favorite places and spend the weekend in New York City, actually.
Nueva York, New York, New York. Yes, I love New York. That used to be my playground a long time ago. I used to have a lot of fun. What are you going to do in New York?
We actually have tickets for a Broadway show, which will be a lot of fun to see The Cursed Child.
So this is on Broadway.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a whole nother kind of treat. Well, I'm happy for. And your fiance, his name is what again? What is his name?
Kyle.
Kyle. I had to say that for the audience. I know his name, but um, he's one of my favorite people. By the way, I have to just say, this is an amazing human being. You did very well in that selection criteria of having a good man in your life. And I want to just share with the world that you're a very serious, but loving and kind person, and you deserve a great relationship. So I'm really proud to know you and have you as not only a friend but also working with us at Norm Therapy in every aspect. By the way, Nicole wears so many hats. It's not even funny. It's not even a funny matter. One day she's working on this project. Next, no, forgive me. Tell us, what do you do? What do you do at Norm Therapy and ARO? Please, you tell us. Forgive me for saying.
That's okay. Yeah, I handle the hiring process and oversee the recruitment of all volunteers, as well as Norm therapists both at ARO and at Norm Therapy.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. But people really don't. What is a day? Plus, you have like a normal job too, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes you just feel like you're using people. I don't want to feel that way. But thank you for being so wonderful about it. I mean, you're killing it. You have been since day one. I can't even tell you the immense pride I have when I watch our team go to work. We really do, I think, some great work. So, what motivates you in a day? How does your day start?
Yeah, I would say no 2 days are ever the same, especially with ARO. Everything's always growing and changing very quickly. So every day is a little bit different, but I feel like for the most part, I get to interact with people across the organization regularly. I love being able to see those new volunteers incoming throughout their hiring process and as they're onboarding and see how they go on to blossom in their particular role or department and really see how everything kind of comes together in the end. So it's definitely a very collaborative process and organization-wide, really.
I've said this before, and I'll just say it again. You are the vanguard to both organizations. You really are. But principally Arrow, you are the vanguard. Who gets in and who doesn't? What makes for a good Arrow person? And then I'll ask you more about norm therapy in a moment. What makes for a good Arrow person? Abuse refugee.
I would say in a lot of ways, I almost feel like it has a little bit less to do with the hard skills for the job and a little bit more to do with personality and motivation. We have a lot of volunteers who have personal experiences with abuse or have seen a loved one go through it. And I think that creates a really compassionate and welcoming environment that is not very common in most organizations. And so that's something that we look for a lot in the interview process, even if someone doesn't have the background or the experience for one of our roles, then still giving them that chance to learn and grow. And a lot of times those people end up thriving.
They really do. I mean, we have a great cross-training, I guess, ability within the organization where we can allow people to just deal with any aspect of the company or learn from anyone within the company or any team or even join those teams at any given time based on their availability and additional work that they'd like to perform on behalf. So I think that back in the military, I brought that concept into the organization because back in the military, everything we did was cross-training. I knew everybody on my team's job and they knew my job. So if something were to happen to me, then they could move on with the operational mission that we were on. Same, I believe, in the corporate space. And I think you've done an excellent job of selecting the kinds of people who have that stick-to-itness and that esprit de corps, to just be a part of the team. I think you've done a great job there. More importantly, not then the people at Arrow, but more importantly, the mission of Arrow is to provide norm therapy service or therapeutic services to the world. And with that being its mission, Norm Therapy Inc. plays a great part in it. And what we do is we undergird the nonprofit. We don't commingle or mix. We just completely support it and provide our infrastructure and our training and our doctrine and our lessons to the 501c3, and they provide it to the world. And you've been overseeing a lot of those aspects in the back office, along with Kim, who I interviewed the other day, Kelly Dean, the global executive director, and quite a few others. How does it feel to look at doctrine in the making and compare that same doctrine to that of institutions around the world that are very, bedrock insofar as what we believe institutions should be? Mm-hmm. How would you grade our back office, what we do, our principles, our policies? How do you think we're doing there if you had to give us a grade? Being unbiased as you can be, that's okay.
Yeah, I would say it's very unparalleled, especially for a volunteer or a nonprofit organization. It's more so on the level of a lot of mainstream companies and organizations that have had these organizations built up for years. And Arrow's been able to create something that's very strong and steady. And I think that's something that a lot of people are really drawn to. It's a lot more like a job than a volunteer position, and you get to do things rather than, for example, volunteering at a soup kitchen. You get to work in HR, you get to work in social media and have those real life experiences. And so it very much has that kind of softness of the nonprofit side and a small environment where people are all commingled, as well as having those support structures behind it, like a lot of those big companies do.
Thank you. Thank you. I like to hear it from you because you are, again, our vanguard. You and your team, and you have some amazing, when I get emails or WhatsApp messages or whatever I'm getting, Slack, Asana, and those different platforms that we use, when I'm getting those messages, sometimes these are the most courteous people in the world. With these people to jump out of the way. Hi, Michael. How are you? Hope you're doing well today. I'm like, well, okay, I can answer this. This is good. And I say that with extreme laudatory commendation. I really do. I say that because we have some high quality people, no matter their education level or oftentimes even their backgrounds. They come, and roll up their sleeves and they come to play. They're not there to just, mess around. They're going to play the game and play it right. And I like that about our organization. Tell me this. What do you do when you have someone on a call with you and they become difficult to deal with? How do you determine whether they can have a place with us or not? What do you do to calm them down or move them along their way? Or what are your strategies?
Yeah, I would say a big part of it is de-escalation, just kind of getting them back to a point where everyone's calm and you can have a discussion about where it's stemming from. And depending on the causation of the emotions that are coming up, perhaps it's just that they're a better fit in a different part of the organization, or perhaps it's not the field for them. Maybe they're more interested in other areas and it would be better fit for them somewhere else. So having that conversation to be able to figure out what is the core of what you're experiencing right now. And if there's another place for you, we'd love to have you stay in the organization and continue to work with you. And if not, we hope to be able to collaborate with you in the future and cross paths again.
I love that protocol. No, I'm glad I'm not normally involved in every interview, although I do enjoy when I'm involved. But I try to leave that up to you and the hiring, you as a hiring manager, but also the other managers in the departments that we have to make those decisions. I think micromanagement is terrible. I can't stand looking over anyone's shoulders or having anyone look over my shoulders. So I think you guys do a great job of that. Tell me something, or tell our audience, you are also a psychotherapist, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yay. That comes in handy sometimes to the world. You get a different perspective from a mental health care point of view, oftentimes on things that are happening, things we do. Um, and we have a lot of professionals in our organization, like Nicole and Kim and Kelly, who are other types of professionals, not necessarily in the mental health care field, but in other fields adjacent, or even medical field. We have medical doctors, and we have people who have gone through we have PhDs of every kind in our think tank. So Nicole fits right in with a bunch of good thinkers, I think, and good doers as well. With that being said, what do you think about the norm therapist as a thing? What do you think about the norm therapist?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it's very different from traditional mental health care. And one of the ways that it's very different is we're not treating mental health. And I know you've said this before, and having been abused doesn't mean that you have a mental health issue. It just means that you've been abused. And those things could absolutely be comorbid, but in a lot of cases, mental health treatment might not be the right treatment for someone who's going through abuse and not a mental health crisis. And having that separation really gives the opportunity for norm therapists to be able to share personal experiences, and having those lived experiences is a big part of what we do with norm therapy. We have a lot of people that come on board and say, I've had these experiences, but I'm not a psychologist. I haven't gone to school for counseling or any sort of mental health field. And our response is always that if you have those experiences in your life where you've experienced either abuse or difficult situations that you can just take and learn from and use it to help others, then that's going to be a big part of what makes a norm therapist. And one of the things that I always say to explain it is, if you broke your leg and someone who had never broken their leg said, "How about you try and walk it off? Get up and walk it off. I think that'll fix it." That's not going to do anything.
Not at
And so
all.
having someone who's been through perhaps a similar experience or maybe a little bit different, but having some of those same undertones is going to be a lot more meaningful to a victim or survivor than someone who's never experienced it.
That's a very good point. What do you think? And I need to share with the world a couple other things about you. I put part of your resume on the YouTube channel in the narrative, but I want to share with them that you're also a level 6. We have 9 levels of norm therapy. You're a level 6, about to become a level 7 soon after we're funded, but a level 7 norm therapist. That means you're very good at what you do, and you actually took out almost a year of your life to become a norm therapist and to graduate and do all that as well, while doing all of your work, while having a normal job. People oftentimes think it's an overwhelming responsibility to help others, but you have shown us the way. Uh, Tell me your experience as a norm therapist. Um, what gives you the drive and the impetus to say, I can do this and others can too? What puts you in that mindset?
Funny enough, when I first applied to ARO, it was very early on in the norm therapy process. And so we didn't have yet the established cohorts. And I applied as a recruiter thinking that I would just stay within HR. I didn't really know anything about norm therapy or the rest of ARO. And as I started to hear a little bit more, I started to realize that was something that I wanted to be involved in, and it sounded like something very powerful to be able to help victims and survivors of abuse in a different way that isn't available to people, and especially being virtual and international. It's such a large reach that we have. I've talked to so many people in different countries that reach out for help, and there's not much that I can do for them from the US, where a lot of our restrictions are based within the US, and having organizations that are internationally available to people makes a huge difference. And as I started going through the training, I started to see a lot of how people are impacted by abuse in ways that you don't even realize. And you don't maybe think of these sorts of responses or these personality traits as being a result of being abused. But as you learn more about it, you start to pick up on those things. And it's so much more prevalent than you would think. I think almost practically, I would say at least 85% of the people that we interview say, "I've experienced abuse," or "I've watched someone that I loved go through it." So it's a much, much more prevalent issue than people even realize.
You have a very powerful personality. It's magnetic. It's strong. You can tell that when you open your mouth to speak, people want to listen, and that kind of uh, you exude that kind of power. Were you always this way?
No, no.
Tell
I
us what.
used to be very quiet. Yes, I definitely grew up very, very shy, would not raise my hand in a room full of people, would want to pass out at the idea of giving a presentation or speaking live to a group of people. And
You just said
the
pass out, right?
yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I heard that. Okay.
Yeah. So it was something that I very much struggled with for really all of my life. And it wasn't until I was probably late in college and shortly after graduating that I started to grow a little bit more into being comfortable in different spaces. And also, I feel I'm someone who very much adjusts to the space that I'm in. And Arrow's a perfect example of there's other spaces that I maybe wouldn't want to raise my hand and give my input. And Arrow's a very open space where I feel very comfortable doing that.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Anyone in the company looks at you and they back in Michael Jordan days, say, "I want to be like Mike." And a lot of these, I see them, these human resources folk on your team. They're all emulating you and each other, and the concepts we're supporting. And And I kind of dig that. And I just kind of step back and watch it sometimes and, play the Michael Gibson role when I have to. But I'm very interested in how you always been able to maintain that. What is your secret to keeping people nice to one another, cordial? I know Kelly's mission in life is to make sure everybody gets along and have a great environment. But you specifically dealing with human capital. Sometimes it isn't all of what you want it to be. Maybe it's more. Sometimes you have to corral it down a little bit. But tell me, what is your secret to maintaining a harmonious environment over there?
I feel like I came from an interesting background into HR where I didn't study HR. I hadn't had an HR or recruiting based job before ARO. And so coming in, I didn't have a lot of those perhaps um, set rules that people make within each industry of you have to do things this way or you need to follow these procedures. I very much look at it as a person-centered field. And I mean, it's called human resources for a reason. And so focusing on that human part where it makes such a big difference to have an environment where people feel like they can approach their manager, their leader, and say, I'm having a really difficult time right now, and I just need a break or I need extra support. And creating an environment where people are comfortable voicing things or sharing very personal experiences is really big, and especially staying in tune, I think, with the team and noticing if someone maybe who is typically very engaged is suddenly kind of drifting back a little bit, checking in with them and seeing if there's something going on in their personal life. A lot of times we do those sorts of check-ins and then we do hear about extreme circumstances that people are going through, and then we're able to better help support them and restructure, whether it's projects or restructure kind of team structures of how can we best support this person without overwhelming them and giving them the space and the grace to be able to be a human being with feelings and problems in their own lives while also maintaining that relationship and volunteership with ARO.
I think that's a great answer. Thank you very much for that, Nicole. I like that answer. Um, your experience in the world, though, I think you're originally your family's from like Iceland or Greenland or one of these places. So you have that crisp international outlook, I guess, on the United States, a very clean and clear and wholesome, I would even say, just having known you for a while, outlook on the United States. How do you see the US as being the hub for norm therapy worldwide insofar as we set up our global, and I want to talk more about this now, but as we set up our funding, what kind of people will we be looking for? I mean, specifically, will education play a big part? Will experiential knowledge, will, adaptability, abuse? What types of things will you be looking for? Because you already know that you're going to be charged with that effort worldwide, and your team will work that out. So tell us, what are you looking for? And I want people who are seeing this to know that this is doable, very doable, to become a norm therapist and help other people and to get paid. And tell us what that pay structure will look like if you can.
Yeah, we definitely, and maybe this isn't the most HR answer, but I would say, look less at your resume and skills and education and more what can you bring for transferable skills and what sort of lived experiences can you bring to the table? Really looking at someone who's empathetic, apathetic, has that compassion that really wants to help people because ultimately, if you don't have that sort of drive within you, it's going to be a very, very difficult field to be a part of. You're going to get completely burnt out very quickly, and it's going to be just extra stressful and also not be as successful for the victims or survivors that you're working with. So having that passion to be able to help people, and a big part of it also being international is there's a lot of elements of other cultures that being in the US, I might not understand very intricately and know the exact needs of those cultures. And so having someone within their culture work with those victims and survivors that is familiar can understand the intricacies of how those different areas work. What are the struggles that they face? Sometimes abuse in one country isn't considered abuse in another country. And having the people of all different backgrounds is really important. And it gives us that window into what that place or that group of people is experiencing so that we can help tailor our services to best suit them. And in terms of the pay structure, so we're working on the for-profit side for Norm Therapy and have built out a pay structure per level of Norm therapist. So for example, how I am a level 6A, and so there's 9 levels, and people going through training are an level 1, and when you graduate the training, you're a level 3 and then can continue to be promoted from there. And so we're looking at making it as competitive as possible for especially those in the mental health industry. And oftentimes they can be very underpaid and overworked, and making our starting wages at a place that is much more livable than people who have even been in their field for decades and are still struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. So that's something that we've been putting a really big focus on.
We're human capital oriented in everything that we do. We want to make sure that value is always a part of any process that we apply to how we operate and how we treat our people. I think that's very important. So, I think you did a study for us. It was probably you, or at least you were involved in it early on, where we looked at, like for instance, a mental health care person or a therapist having caseloads and receiving, menial pay. I don't want to say that, but not competitive pay, but also saddled with sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt from student loans. And they're not making enough money to even subsist. And I don't think that's fair. It's like being a school teacher, if you will, that they do all the work preparing our children to be great in life, but yet, they're paid the least, or they're thought of the least, and they have to fight for pay and fight for, to be recognized. And I think it's getting better in the school teachers area as well, and so far as that profession is concerned. But as far as therapists, I don't think it's getting better. Just from my studies and just reading online, you can Google or use the chat, and you can figure out just about anything and generate all kinds of articles quickly about how people are not being taken care of in those fields. Why do you think that is?
That's a very interesting topic because I feel like it's so systemic and it's been a part of the culture for so long, but for some reason we still take those people that in society really structure it, like teachers and therapists, people who support other professionals, and we almost put them at the bottom in terms of compensation and support and being able to give them the resources that they need to help people. And it's very much you can't pour out of a glass if it's empty. If you're not filling your own cup, you can't fill others. And I think a lot of people reach that point pretty early on in their career that they feel very burnt out after just a few years of working in the field and having those sorts of very, very difficult conversations 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and experiencing that without having the support behind them is, I think, a very detrimental part to not supporting our counselors, therapists, psychologists in being able to continue the work that they do.
I think they should be remunerated for the type of, you know what? You bring another thought to mind. I always tell people want you to do better all the time. They just don't want you to do better than them. And I think that's the underlying psychology behind why the service industry that serves those professionals and creates and develops those and promote those professionals. I think that's why the general theme is, okay, now that we have the knowledge and we can move forward, we've been taught, let's keep them down. Because if they've taught me, if these are the people who taught me, maybe they'll surpass me at some point. But that's not the truth, because these are two different professions. One is to teach you how to do it. The other is actually to do it. But people don't see that thin line. It's kind of a blurred line. I think it's a very powerful statement you just made. I think that we need to start treating our people commensurate to the value of work that they're providing. That's why we start out. I think the average salary for a mental health care professional starting out is $30,000-$40,000 a year today in 2021. Sorry, 2024. I don't know why I was thinking 21 and 2024. But in today's market, you can hardly subsist on that for one person, less known family. And that just can't. And I think we're starting at level 1, you're not paid. I'm not sure. But level 2, you're paid like a stipend. And level 3, once you graduate, you're salaried. I think we start you off in your mid to low 60s. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And that's starting. And that's what our funding agreements and our actual funding that we're developing and what we later do in the marketplace, our revenue generation, that's what we're targeting. And I think we worked out a pretty good strategy to help people at least subsist starting out and have a life and, be able to make their payments and the credit cards and the car and those things. And yeah, in today's prices and market, $60,000 is not a lot of money, but it's better than nothing, and it's better than what you could be making if you did something else. So we would be looking for professionals from all walks of life. I mean, we have doctors, attorneys, we have psychotherapists, of course. We have all kinds of professional entrepreneurs who come on to become Norm therapists because they see the potential of what we're doing in the future to help people with their abuse care. And it's so rampant abuse care. And I'm saying all this to prepare you for my next series of questions, because we got just a little while to go. But, all this developing a marketplace is hard work. We've had people wouldn't believe how many hours of meetings we have a week and how many times we go over a very small issue and a very huge issue without micromanaging it, but to make sure it's correct, to make sure it's right, and not only right for us, but right for the people that are performing them or that are experiencing them or that are benefiting from them. We do that a lot. And I enjoy that part of our collaborations that we have as an organization. And I think the synergy we create from that is very indicative of how you operate in HR and how your people operate. You're very, I don't want to just use the word serious, but I want to say centric about bringing people together into the hub and then dispatching them out to their assigned tasks and having that collaborative operational planning and execution occur in real time, but with happy people doing it and people eager to get it done. And then people measuring themselves as well as, of course, you're measuring them and the metrics of are we doing this right? Are we getting something out of it? Are we giving what we're supposed to give? I think you do a great job, and I think our company actually, or both companies actually echoes that as well. The scary thing about what we do is we're catching on. I mean, look at our social media, look at all the advertising and stuff we do. We wouldn't even get a click or a like. Now we're getting 10 and 20 people and 50 and check marks and reposts and all of those things, which is a part of your growth. But I don't think we've ever eliminated one value-added technique or one piece of important doctrine or training. We've not eliminated one thing for the sake of getting more likes or getting more people or any of that. Do you understand why we stay so steadfast on our guns, especially from a human resources point of view, our standards? Why do we maintain them as such? Can you elaborate with everyone on it?
Absolutely. I would say, especially ARO's been around for, I think, 6 years now or so, and Norm Therapy a lot longer, but in the grand scheme of things, being a relatively new, young organization, you do need those hard structures to be able to build up on top of that. And a big part of being able to work with a team and collaborate is you can always loosen the reins, it's much harder to tighten the reins. And so
Oh, yeah.
setting those hard boundaries right from the get-go is going to build a much better foundation that's not going to waver as you continue to stack on top of it. And you'll be able to start allowing more creative freedom and ideas and different expressions of it without having the bottom collapse.
And I like that. And you're right. You're absolutely correct. You have to be collaborative in everything you do, and you have to make hard stops. You have to have hard stops and make those hard decisions. You know, we have a part of our norm therapy course, as well, and you've taught this, but how to make those decisions, the decision-making process. So within the conceptual framework of the decision-making process, what do you do? How do you do it? And what hard stops and what types of hard lines that you take on certain issues without hurting people or hurting your organization? That's a pretty difficult dance to do. It's not very easy because some people are so into their management style that they don't listen to others. And some people are so into not being in that management style that they listen to others too much and are incapable of making a decision based because they just go with what everyone else says or what everyone else says. So, how do you think we've not been able to fall into those quagmires?
Mm. I would say a big part of a lot of our leadership, even though we have very different personalities and experiences, there's some commonalities there that have tied everything together. And a big part of that is truly caring about the teams that you're working with rather than the work product. I know Kelly always says nothing is due yesterday. If something happens in someone's life that's unexpected, the work can wait. We can always revisit that. The person matters first. And having the leadership show that trickles down into the rest of the teams. I know that I have always been someone who's very indecisive in a lot of ways, still am, but especially when it comes to a workplace environment, it can be tricky to find the dynamic of where do I draw the lines? Where am I going to be flexible? And that's something that, especially within ARO, starting out as an all-female organization and still being largely female, and especially within the leadership team, it's very empowering. And I think something that a lot of organizations miss. I know that I definitely wouldn't have gone into most organizations and felt that sense of empowerment. And that's something that I've been able to attain with ARO as I've seen also the kind of potential that you and Kelly and things have seen in me and other people that we don't see in ourselves. And that can be something where happens a lot at ARO, actually. We approach someone about taking on a new role or responsibility, and they say, "Oh, I don't think I can do that." And we say, well, we really believe that you can, and let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, it's fine. But having that sort of kind of lift behind you, it makes a big difference.
Well, I think it's incumbent upon us as leadership, and you're part of the executive management leadership in the organization as well. But I think it's incumbent upon us to give people three things. And I want everybody out in listening land of this podcast. You must have autonomy. People who are not autonomous to be the best version of themselves, to be the strongest, the most intellectual, the most effective, autonomy in self, and just can be themselves. If you don't allow them that in the corporation, you're going to stifle your own organization as well as them. But along with that autonomy comes responsibility. If you're not responsible as an individual for what you're charged with, then you're going to fail, or you're going to fail somebody in the process. Because if you treat whatever it is like it's yours, it's your own, then you'll normally the outcome will do better. So autonomy, responsibility are very vital, but will both fail. Both of them will fail if you don't provide them with the authority to get it done. And I think we do all three. I think we make sure that people have the authority to do what we tell them to do or do what they think they need to be done, even taking the initiative. I think the autonomy, I don't look over anyone's shoulder. Only time I hear about it when stuff goes right or wrong is when we're in a meeting and we're telling everybody. So I'm not looking over anyone's shoulder. I know Kelly doesn't either. She works a lot with everyone, but we're just not those kinds of people. But we want people to have an opinion, be autonomous, be strong, make a new way. If it doesn't work, tell us and we'll fix it. Kelly oftentimes tell people when we're interviewing them, because when we have these coffee with the co-founders or we have meet and greets, I hear Kelly oftentimes telling people that, if you got a better way, show us, teach us, we'll learn. And if it's not something, 90% of what people tell us, we'll take a very serious look at and we'll try to apply it as an organization. It may not always fit, it may not always work, and we may not always apply it, but at least you have a voice. And I think that's very important. I think that when you guys, I've listened to your interviews, I've watched you guys in action over at you. I think you guys instill that in people during the interview process. You make them feel like they do have a voice and it does matter, and what they say and do will have an effect. Do you think I'm accurate in what I just said?
Absolutely. And that's something that I talk a lot about in interviews when people ask about ARO's culture and if they can bring ideas for it. And that's one of those things that I think 100 brains is always better than one trying to solve a problem. And especially when it comes to working within a team, and even our HR team is very large compared to most HR teams, and having that many people just thinking of ideas and brainstorming, someone else may think of something that I would have never considered, or have an experience where, oh, I tried that and it didn't work. Here's how I think that we could make it better. And there's definitely been times where I've had people come and join my team that I look at their resume and I say, they are so much more experienced than me. They should be in my role. Why am I leading them?
We
And
get some great clients, and I'm not client candidates, don't we? I mean, we
we
really
do,
get
we
some
really
amazing
do.
people come on. So, okay, forgive me, I'm just patting myself on the back for
That's
saying it
okay.
has something to do with that. But you've really done a great job. I mean, we've targeted some amazing people, and they've come in droves with Fortune 500, Fortune 100, doctors, lawyers. Everybody wants to know ARO and norm therapy, and I'm kind of okay with that. But keep going. Forgive me for interrupting. I'm just
That's
enjoying
all
that.
right.
But go ahead.
No problem. No worries at all. Yeah, I think it's something that you kind of have to switch your mindset with. And I've had to do a number of times. You see those maybe people come in that do have a lot more experience, and rather than looking at it as maybe they should be in my position and taking that as I can learn a lot from them. They can bring a lot to the team, and they likely have experiences that I don't have, that a lot of other people don't have, that we can really utilize to make the team as a whole bigger, and looking at the bigger picture in that sense.
Yes, I think that's the right approach. I mean, anything that comes to the table you don't understand. I used to tell people all the time, it's not important that I know everything, but it is important that everyone around me does. So that's what you've been able to bring to ARO and Norm Therapy both, insofar as the kind of professionals and the way we execute. I think our execution is better than most. When we get something done, when we say we're going to do something, we actually do it. We put the requisite amount of time and effort in back office and development and training and all of that. And training is the number one thing I think about any organization in the world. If you got good training, you got a good organization. You got poor training, you have a poor organization. It's really that simple. And I think we value training probably above everything else. Would you say that the kind of candidates that you're looking for, whomever's watching this video right now, that if they're going to be interested in being a part of that dynamic and the growth of what we're doing as well, and if futuristically being paid for it, if you think that there's something you need to tell them to prepare for, to get ready for that, what would that be?
I would say that there's a few things to consider in terms of one, of course, the work that we do, and even if you are in a kind of tangential role such as HR and not working directly with victims and survivors, it still holds a certain weight. And we're all still working with those victims and survivors in some capacity. And so keeping in mind, am I in a spot where I personally can handle this kind of weight, or am I maybe going through my own things that I need to take a step back and sort out before I can take on anyone else's? And even when it comes to the actual role itself, regardless of which position it is, looking at maybe I've never worked in social media, but perhaps I do have experience with advertising, and that can absolutely overlap. And seeing those sorts of similarities within yourself, it's all about how you position yourself and how you view yourself. And I very much saw that firsthand interviewing for jobs. I had quite a few that I went in saying, oh, I only have volunteer experience in this area, and almost kind of downplaying it. And just to give it a shot, I went into one interview and decided, no, I'm not going to downplay it. I'm going to explain everything that I do in my position and just be very matter of fact with it. And that was the first job offer that I got. So it makes a very big difference how you perceive yourself and your skills and how you portray that to others.
So there are many people out there who may have an eclectic array of skills and personalities and can do it, opportunities in their lives, but they don't really see it because they like to downplay it, and they feel afraid to champion it in front of a recruiter or an interviewer. So your advice would be to forget all that, chuck it out of the window.
Yes.
Be yourself. Got it. Got it. Now I want to ask you about your Nickelodeon. And this is something important and I know dear to you and our organization as well. But there's something about Nickelodeon you wanted to mention. Please tell us.
Yeah, there's a very popular documentary that just aired. It's a multi-part series about the dark sides of Nickelodeon and kids working on TV sets. And this one focused particularly early 2000s, late 90s, and talked about a lot of those shows that I know at least my generation grew up with, such as Drake and Josh and iCarly, Victorious, and all sorts of others that we have very fond memories of and remember as being a very positive experience of seeing these shows, making us laugh. And this is starting to expose the darker side of that and the abuse that the children went through on set from producers and people who are working with them, directors, all sorts of different positions where you would never have known if these people hadn't come forward, and they're starting to create an environment where other people are able to come forward as well because they feel like it's more comfortable, more well received. They're realizing that they're not the only person that went through it. And although this documentary focused on Nickelodeon and especially characters such as Dan Schneider was a very big topic within the documentary, it still is something that I'm sure is extremely prevalent within other industries and something that a lot of even the parents in the documentary have gotten criticism for, saying, why didn't you see this? Why didn't you step forward? And I mean, there's a number of different reasons given, but ultimately it's something that in situations where I know we've talked about having norm therapy in different fields and different locations. And I think if, for example, there was a norm therapist on those types of sets, it would have been a complete game changer for helping people spot those sorts of things before they actually escalated to the point that they did.
That's a very powerful statement, and I absolutely agree with you. Because when you're in such a closed environment, even movie stars of great stature and age, they're normally surrounded by, enablers, but also people who act as walls to them. So people don't really know what's going on in their life, in their personal life. And sometimes their egos get bigger than their actual existence, and they end up getting in trouble or hurting themselves, ending up with the wrong kinds of people. That happens to adults. So imagine the children. Imagine, and that's something to really think about. I'm glad you mentioned it for that area. I think that we just started an initiative in our organization the other day where we're going to be looking at these different television programs and series and start talking into the different studios to see if we can get a norm therapist trained on the set and have them become a part to kind of look out for these types of potential problems and abuses that occur. It's truly amazing. But also, I want to mention to you, how are you going to fit in? And that's a great point, unless there's something else you want to say about it, because I want to hear it. But how do you, when we start, we're developing norm therapy for police, because most police go out and they're policemen, and women, they're not social workers, but they need to have some idea of how to de-escalate, how to arbitrate, and oftentimes arbitrate with different circumstances that occur without pulling out their gun, or having the perceptive ability based on the training provided in norm therapy, because we teach lie detection, we teach situational awareness, and a few other things about norm therapy to our norm therapists, but to also have that skill set where they know that there's imminent danger because they're situationally aware and they know what. Experiential knowledge is probably the best thing in the world to make you situationally aware. But when you can share that experience with others who are on the job, OJT, that lends for a better environment for them to see what to look out for and what not to. So I hope that would be something we develop. But we have norm therapy for police, educators as well, because one of the biggest problems in the school system now is kids are attacking teachers. It's really bad. And I think teachers need to know how to psychologize, but more importantly, how to deal with that type of environment where people are not only abusive to them as teachers, but to each other on a wire. And I think that kind of training needs to go into our education system all over the world. Well, mostly in the West, the United States, mostly in the West. But in most parts of the world, you go to school to learn, and they don't play any games. They do not play. You learn, and then you get out and you go about your life. But in the United States, it's become so free. People don't understand what freedom really means often, and they just run amok and, violate the principles of other. And then parenting is becoming a big problem. I think parents need to be able to take courses where they can learn how to talk to their kids, how to prevent abuse in their lives, how not to abuse them, how not to be cyclical in the type of pain that occurs in their family. And norm therapy addresses all of that and much more. I think we're going to get some questions from the audience. If you're game, we got like 10 minutes left. It's okay. 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 Here's a question. It's similar to your other question you had before, but I think it's more specific. How has Nicole's training and experience in norm therapy affected or changed her views on norm therapy as a psychotherapist?
Good question.
There you go. Somebody's on their game today. There you go.
I would say prior to going through the trainings, I would say, a relatively good grasp on what norm therapy was and what the goal was, just given hiring for those positions. We have a pretty good understanding of the day-to-day, but going through the training is different when you start to see those victims and survivors. And I often find myself thinking about exactly that comment of, these people might not have a mental illness. It's just that they're abused and they just need that hand up to be able to get the support to get out of their situations, to get the strength and be able to realize all that they've gone through. And I think that that's something that therapy can kind of glance over. I'm sure that there's some therapists that go more in detail to it, and there's a lot of different types of therapy, but we really dig into the core. We don't focus on the symptoms, which I think is a lot of what mental health focuses on. It's, oh, I'm feeling depressed. Okay, let's look at treating that depression in this moment, not why are you feeling depressed? What happened maybe 20, 30 years ago that led to this series of events that has continued to spiral within your life? And so that's something that I look at very differently, is not just looking at someone's symptoms, but what's really behind the symptoms and putting a focus on that. Because if you just treat the symptom, it's going to come back. It's going to continue to circle and cause problems. It's not going to truly resolve it.
Yes. So we look at the chronology of their pathologies. I think that's important to do, to look at how it operated your life. Abuse is like a key to an engine. Once you start that engine, that abuse becomes more powerful. It becomes where you can drive it into other parts of your life and crash and do all kinds of things. Because whereas there's one abuse, what I've found over the years, there's always another. Somebody says to you, and I always use this example, somebody says to you, Nicole, he loves me, he loved me so much, but you're looking at her black eye and her cracked lip. And she's saying he loves me. Not only is she a victim of physical abuse, and probably narcissism and probably verbal abuse, but she's also a victim of self-abuse. She's a victim of prevarication or lying. She's a pathological liar because she's not just lying to you and say he loves me. She's lying to herself because she believes it.
Yeah.
And I think the norm therapy addresses that in so many different ways. And when people finally see what their detriments are truly escaped or extricated from their abuser, they often seem to find a sense of normalcy. And I want to say this at the end of this whole thing, not the end, but we have another one here coming up. But what's it? Anyway, I'm reading my chart and talking to you. I apologize. I should have a producer in my ear, and I do, but thank you. I think that it's important to understand, for people to understand in these scenarios, is that, you'll never know just how good you are about anything in life or how okay you're going to become until you step outside of yourself and look at it. That's why the old adage, you can't see the forest for the trees. And oftentimes, the abuse victim they're not in front of a tree. Their face is smashed into a tree. They don't even know they're in a forest, less known can see it from the outside. And that's what I think we really help them gain perspective is step out of yourself and let's take a look at who you truly are. Because norm therapy isn't about my normal or your normal or Kelly's normal or whatever we teach normal. It's about what would your normal be if you didn't have this abuse, if you didn't have this curse, if it wasn't generational. That's what norm therapy is about. It's helping you find your norm. How can you ever know normal if you've never known norm? If you have never known your norm, how can you know normal? You don't. That's something we like to help people, arrive to. I want to see if I have another question here. We only have like 4 minutes left. Give me a couple of minutes of what you want to share with the world. If you had any advice for the world or anything you want to say, please take a couple of minutes and tell us, and then I'll close this out if that's okay with you.
Sure thing. Yeah. I would say in any industry, whether it's norm therapy or HR or any other industry, education is really key when it comes to learning all that you can. There's always more to learn. It's never-ending resource, which is the best part. But a lot of people come to us, and even as we're listing our 21 abuses in the initial interview, you see it go off in their head and they say, oh my God, I've experienced that. And I had no idea, or I'm currently in this situation and I didn't even know it was abuse. And that's something that a lot of people kind of think of, maybe physical and psychological abuse is typically kind of the main ones. And there are so many more, even well beyond our 21, that we're continuing to add to at all times. And
PTSD is one of them. PTSD is coming up. Working with.
yeah,
And then once we get the proper licensing, alcohol and drug, I want to say that as another, those abuses that will come on board as well. But keep going, please. I'm enjoying this.
yeah, absolutely. And as we continue to add, we're also continuing to educate people, even if they don't come to ARO and get norm therapy services. Just being able to know what I'm experiencing is abuse and it is something that's real. It's not something I'm making up or exaggerating in my head. It's a real experience, can change someone's life entirely. And similarly, I think when we go and put norm therapy in school systems, police stations, teach it to parents, it's going to create an environment where just by knowing a little bit more about abuse and the ways, the forms that it can come in is going to change lives, even when it comes down to a lot of, I think parents kind of think that they have a very well-rounded idea of what's going on in their kid's life. And then you suddenly hear that someone that the parent trusted might be abusing the child, and right
Yeah.
under their nose, they had no idea. And so having that sort of education is a really big part of being able to put a stop to that abuse.
Nicole, I have really enjoyed this interview. You are an amazing person. I've always thought that anyway. But I'm so proud that you've been able to convey to the world and to the future viewers and the present viewers of our podcast that there is a way. If you want to help people, you can come to Norm Therapy and ARO, respectively known as goarrow.org. And of course, normtherapy.com. And ARO is ARO, not ARROW. You won't get us that way. But thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. And I'm going to read our closing announcements, okay?
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I loved every moment of it. If you've enjoyed and got something out of today's session, please show your support by sharing this video, subscribing to our channel, liking it, and commenting. Comments are very important. It's engagement. Please go to normtherapy.com or goarrow.org or both and explore our opportunities and seek help for yourself or someone needing our services. If you're interested in applying to participate in our sessions as a guest, online guest, we'd love to have you. If you want to be a victim or survivor, not want to be, if you are a victim or survivor, email us at contact@normtherapy.com and for online sessions, but also for private sessions. You can go to both goarrow.org and normtherapy.com to sign up for sessions. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again on Sunday, April 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's New York time, where I'll be interviewing Eve Kaniaru. I always say it correctly now. Now I'm on air, I don't say it correctly. Kaniaru. She's a level 5 norm therapy intake specialist, norm therapist, and she's HR hiring supervisor, so one of your cohorts over there, Nicole. I'll be interviewing her. She's truly amazing. She has her own voice. You're going to love her. She's very serious about life, but she's very happy about it too. So it's a very good mix. And all the rest is posted in our YouTube post. Thank you very much, Nicole. I thank you for being here. And everyone else out there, thank you for joining us. And I wish that you tell family and friends to join us on our next session and kind of get the word out that we're trying to do some good. And I think we're doing a great job at it. Thank you, Nicole. And happy birthday again, and enjoy your blessing day, okay?
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Talk to you soon. Bye, y'all. Okay. That was good, Nicole.